Who was Joseph Suk? This video was requested by a viewer of this channel, and as always I'm happy to oblige. First of all, let's establish which Joseph Suk are we talking about. Well, the request was about the violinist of the 20th century, who in fact was the grandson of the composer of the 19th century into the 20th. But let's cover a bit on the composer in this video as well, because obviously they were related. One was the grandson of the other, and so it's relevant to talk about the elder Joseph Suk. He was a composer born on the 4th of January 1874 and died on the 29th of May 1935. And of course he was a Czech composer, violinist, and apparently an Olympic silver medalist. He studied under Antonin Dvořák, whose daughter Ottilie he married. And he learned organ, violin and piano from his father, Joseph Suk Sr. So we're now up to at least 3 Joseph Suks in the lineage. Will there be more? Let's find out. Apparently this medal that he won at the Olympics was to do with music, not competing in sport. So I'll give you the reference in the description and see if you can make sense of that. Known as one of Dvořák's favourite pupils, Suk also became personally close to his mentor. Indeed, he had married his daughter. The last portion of Suk's life was punctuated with tragedy. Over the span of 14 months around 1905, not only did Dvořák die, but so did Ottilie, Suk's wife, apparently of a heart attack aged only 27. These events inspired Suk's Asrael Symphony, one of his best known works. Joseph Suk, alongside Vítězslav Novák and Ostrachil, not sure if I'm pronouncing the names completely correctly there, is considered one of the leading composers in Czech modernism, with much shared influence among the three coming in turn from Dvořák. Although he wrote mostly instrumental music, Suk occasionally branched out into other genres. Orchestral music was his strong suit, notably the Serenade for Strings, Opus 6 of 1892. He had one child, a son, also named, you guessed it, Joseph, in 1898. Hang on, that's 4 Josephs in the lineage now. Joseph, whose son was Joseph, whose son was Joseph, whose son was Joseph. Joseph Suk Jr. in turn was father of the acclaimed violinist Joseph Suk, who died in 2011 and who is the main subject of this video, and we'll come on to him shortly. In 1933, Joseph Suk, the composer, retired and died in 1935 in Benešov, Czechoslovakia. That's the composer. Let's come on to his grandson now, then, Joseph Suk, the violinist. He was born on the 8th of August 1929 and died on the 7th of July 2011. He was a Czech violinist, a violist, chamber musician and conductor. In his home country he carried the title of National Artist. He belonged to a great musical family, with his great-grandfather being the composer Dvořák and his grandfather, his namesake, the composer and violinist Joseph Suk. And he is known for his excellent recording of the Dvořák concerto. Obviously he can infuse his Czech culture right into that playing. Joseph Suk was born in Prague, grandson of the composer and violinist Joseph Suk, great-grandson of the composer Antonin Dvořák. As a child, Suk Jr. enjoyed a close relationship with his composer grandfather, best remembered for his Serenade for Strings and Asrael Symphony, spending many holidays with him and receiving regular postcards from his tours with the Bohemian Quartet, which Suk Sr. played second violin in as part of this legendary group. As a young child, Suk lived in the Bohemian village of Krečovice, where his grandfather had been born, and apologies for any bad pronunciation of Czech name places. He got his first violin and he started playing at the age of 6, but sadly, before Suk Sr. had the opportunity to hear him play, because his grandfather passed away before he had that chance. Initially, he received lessons from his father. His father was an engineer, also named Joseph, said to have been a hugely talented amateur violinist and pianist, but who nevertheless did not choose to pursue a career as a musician. So there was a break in the lineage of musicians in between generations. However, he kind of was a musician, albeit a talented amateur, not a professional. The most important of Joseph Suk's teachers was Jaroslav Kočian, who started teaching him privately when Suk was 7 years old. He first appeared in public at the age of 11, but then withdrew until he reached his late teens, all the time remaining a pupil of Kočian. Apparently, he used to keep Kočian's death mask in his sitting room, below an enlarged motif from the violin solo from the incidental music to Julius Caesar's play Raduz and Mahuelnia by his grandfather. After finishing high school in 1945, he entered the Prague Conservatory between 1945 and 1951, where his teachers were Jaroslav Kočian, Norbert Kubat and Karel Schneeberger, stuck right in the middle of the communist bloc there behind the Iron Curtain. During his studies in 1949, Suk was, however, allowed to leave and was sent to Paris and Brussels to continue his studies. After leaving the Prague Conservatory, he spent 4 terms at the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague with the professors Marie Hilunova and Alexander Plocek. However, before finishing his studies, he was suspended for political reasons. This was because apparently he objected to the rough military training, obligatory army service, which he said could impact his violin playing career. But eventually he went out to the Army Artist Company, where he spent his 2 years of military service playing violin instead of being in a trench somewhere. From 1950 to 1952, he was the primarius of the Prague Quartet. From 1953 to 1955, he was concertmaster of the Dramatic Orchestra of the National Theatre in Prague, and until 1957 he was a soloist of the Army Artist Company. His first significant success was a recital in Prague on the 6th of November 1954. Shortly after that, George Szell invited him to the US to play with the Cleveland Orchestra. In 1858 he performed in Germany, the Netherlands and Romania, then France and Belgium. In 1961 he was named a soloist of the Czech Philharmonic, playing on many of its tours and recitals, and he cooperated and made numerous recordings with the world's best orchestras, conductors and interpreters, also winning many prizes for his recordings, the Grand Prix du Disque for Debussy and Janáček sonatas, for the Dumky Trio by Dvořák with Jan Panenka and Milos Sadlo, for the complete collection of Mozart's violin concerts with the Prague Chamber Orchestra conducted by Libor Hlavacek, for the Berg Concerto and for the concertos of Martinu. Very mixed and extensive repertoire. He was also a violist, and he recorded the Sinfonia Concertante by Mozart, playing both parts of violin and viola. With the Czech Philharmonic conducted by Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, he recorded Harold in Italy by Hector Berlioz. And I suppose he must have had to put up with the odd viola joke here and there as well. Suk began his performing life in chamber music with the eminent Prague Quartet. He married his wife Marie in 1951, In the same year, he founded the Suk Trio, named after his grandfather Joseph Suk, together with his friends. And this focused primarily on the Czech repertoire: Dvořák, Smetana, Suk, and Bohuslav Martinu. Another remarkable partnership was with the harpsichordist Professor Zuzana Ruzikova, recording, for example, Bach and Handel's sonatas. They were also dedicated a sonata by Ruzikova's husband, Viktor Kalapis. From 1969 to 1986, he was a teacher at the Music College in Vienna. Czechoslovakia's communist government, in full control from 1948, made life a bit difficult for musicians and other artists wishing to work abroad. Realising, however, that figures of Suk's calibre could bring in foreign currency, the regime allowed him to go on foreign tours, notably with the Czech Philharmonic, and in recognition of his calibre gave him an official post as soloist with the orchestra in 1961. He made his Proms debut in London in 1964 with the BBC Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Malcolm Sargent, in concertos by Mozart No. 3 in G major and Dvořák. His international reputation by this point now secure. And so he was in demand from both within and outside the Eastern Bloc. The following year he returned to the Proms and performed the Beethoven Concerto, which he later recorded with the New Philharmonia and Adrian Bolt. Were there temptations for him to defect to the West? Apparently in 1968, around the time of the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, Suk and his wife Marie were tempted to buy a house in San Francisco. But he was besieged by letters from Czech concert goers begging him to stay at home. And responding to this appeal from people quite unknown to him, he remained as a Czech citizen. So I guess his heart was in his homeland. Suk knew also that had he left his country, then the music of his grandfather could have disappeared from concert programs. So he obviously highly respected his grandfather's name. And Suk was an accomplished viola player, as mentioned, like his great-grandfather Dvořák. Dvořák's viola. He joined the violinist Salvatore Accardo in the Mozart Sinfonia Concertante and playing the viola in the string quintets by Mozart and Dvořák with the Smetana Quartet. He also recorded the Sinfonia Concertante, playing both solo parts himself, as well as Berlioz's Harold in Italy as a viola soloist, and gave recitals with the first half on violin and the second on viola. He made a Dvořák recording on the violin and viola with the pianist Vladimir Ashkenazy, Songs My Great-Grandfather Taught Me, containing 30 of his own transcriptions of vocal works, and released in 2010. In 1974, as a commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the birth of his grandfather Joseph Suk, he founded the Suk Chamber Orchestra and acted as its leader and conductor until the year 2000. He held the title of Meritorious Artist, and since 1977 the title of National Artist. In 2002 he was awarded the National Order of the Legion of Honour, so highly honoured and respected in his home country. Joseph Suk died on the 7th of July 2011, aged 81, of prostate cancer, and was buried in Prague in the Vyšehrad Cemetery. Suk was known as one of the world's best interpreters of Bach, Mozart and Beethoven. Did he at times feel the pressure that came from being part of a musical dynasty? Well, here are his words. Since the very beginning, when I got my first violin from my father, a binding feeling of big expectations bore on me. I wasn't sure whether I was able to be up to the wishes and hopes of my parents and my grandfather. The great commitment of filling my family tradition attached all my artist career. Sometimes it might have opened some gates and routes but on the other hand it meant also an indispensable stress. His repertoire championed his Czech and family inheritance, and he played in ensembles with many of his fellow countrymen. Suk was appreciated for the purity of his tone, his self-effacing musicianship, displaying no technical bravado unless it served the music, and an astonishing command of the instrument. Let's finish with a consideration of the violins that he played.